Hello, happy Monday. I hope everyone had a very good weekend. My name is Kendra Perry. I am your host. I am a functional diagnostic nutritionist, and I help women overcome fatigue, hormone imbalance, and chronic GI disorders so they can get back outside. They can, create that life of adventure of their dreams, because the truth is when your hormones are a mess, when you don't have energy, and when your gut's all messed up, it's really hard to achieve any of those things. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be talking about a topic that I'm pretty passionate about and I'm pretty excited to talk about, energy. So I love talking about energy, mostly because it's something I have really struggled with, but also because it's something that I am seeing so many women struggle with. It's crazy. I rarely work with someone who tells me that they have energies more than like 5 or 6 out of 10. Oh my God, there's so many flies in my house right now. It's crazy. I don't even know how they all got in, but literally hundreds of flies are in my house. I went on a killing spree last night, but they're still around. So if you see lots of flies buzzing by my head, I apologize. I got to go on another killing spree. Okay, so we're going to be talking about energy. And I think, when it comes to energy, a lot of us are self-medicating. I used to do this too. A lot of us drink a lot of caffeine because we wake up, we feel like crap. Sometimes we feel like a train or a bus ran over us and we feel like we need a boost. So we start hitting the coffee, the tea, or, any of those caffeinated beverages. But that's actually not giving us energy. It's kind of just blocking us from feeling how friggin' tired we are. So it's like this artificial boost, but it's not real energy. So my mission is really to help you get that real, genuine energy so that, you can feel your best and you can live that perfect life of your dreams. Because truth be told, when you have the energy to do it, it's actually not that hard to do. But when we're fatigued all the time, we can't even get off the couch, we don't even have the energy to make ourselves a good meal or go out and do that, whatever that thing is that we love to do, well, we just don't really get anywhere with our goals and our aspirations. So we're going to talk about energy today, and I want to talk about 3 very important toxins that are often linked to poor energy, okay? And I see this very commonly, so it's definitely something to keep in mind if you are struggling with your energy levels, okay? So 3 toxins. The first thing I want to talk about is thallium, okay? And so thallium, hi Melissa, thallium is a really interesting metal. So it's a heavy metal, or it's a toxic metal. And so you guys might remember, I don't remember how long ago this was, but it was maybe like 10 years ago or something like that. People got really upset that there was lead in gasoline, right? Because it was making people sick. And the reason they were putting lead into the gasoline was because it would stop the engine from knocking. So people got really upset. People protested and they're like, we cannot have lead in our gasoline. It's a super toxic metal. So the gasoline companies removed the lead, and they had to replace it with something, right? Because I don't think anyone would be very happy if after 10 years their engine was gone to crap and totally needed to be replaced because of all this knocking that happens with the unleaded gasoline. So they took lead out of gasoline, hence that's why they call it unleaded gasoline, but they actually replaced it with thallium, okay? And thallium is a metal that is 10 times more toxic than mercury. Okay, so mercury, I think a lot of us know about mercury, very, very poisonous, very, very toxic. And thallium is even more toxic than mercury. Okay, so any gasoline that's unleaded, like all gasoline, is going to contain thallium, because thallium actually stops the engine from knocking, or whatever it is that the lead used to do. That's what thallium does now. So I would say that thallium is probably, as toxic or even more toxic than lead. And a lot of people don't know about it. And what thallium does is it actually poisons the enzymes that bring nutrition into your mitochondria. So if you can remember from, high school chemistry class or biology class, I guess, the mitochondria is the powerhouse that basically runs the cell. So we're made up of cells, and then the mitochondria run each of our cells. And mitochondria are very much involved in the production of ATP, which is your main molecule that you need for energy. So if you have thallium toxicity, if you're getting exposed to thallium, that is actually interfering with your mitochondria's ability to get that energy or those nutrients into the cell so that it can function properly. So if you have mitochondrial dysfunction, you're going to be tired. There's just There's no way around that. And, you know, I speak about thallium toxicity a lot because it's something that I struggled with too. So a couple of years ago when I ran a urine and stool metals test on myself, I had thallium levels through the roof, which is really interesting because I actually, as you guys know, I live in a pretty isolated mountain town. I live on the top of the mountain. I'm not getting exposed to a lot of those things. But interestingly enough, I do live about an hour away from a zinc and lead smelter. And for some reason, zinc and lead smelting do put thallium into the environment. So, you know, your guess is as good as mine as where I got this. I did live in a city for about 6 years, so it could have been from previous exposure because we do tend to store these things in our body. But I live about an hour away from one of the world's largest zinc and lead smelters. So maybe that has something to do with it. We're upstream of that smelter, but who knows, right? We can get it from a lot of different places. So that's a really common one. And then of course the gasoline. So I tend to see this metal really toxic in people who live in urban areas. So people who live in the city or have lived in the city for a long period of time. So especially if you're living downtown, like you're breathing that exhaust into your lungs and you're getting that thallium exposure. And I would say thallium is one of the biggest drivers of fatigue. And of course, a lot of us do live in cities, so a lot of us are getting exposed to it. And what thallium does is it actually displaces potassium in your system. And potassium is a really, really important mineral, especially for energy and just cellular function in general. Like potassium is an intracellular nutrient. We need it to produce insulin properly. We need it to control our blood sugar. We also need it to have healthy thyroid function. And the lower potassium gets, the more it actually slows down your metabolic rate and it slows down your thyroid. So that too can actually inhibit your energy production as well. Another interesting about thallium that not a lot of people know is it does tend to get concentrated in kale. And, you know, kale is this crazy superfood. I mean, everyone's eating it. And I'm not telling you that kale is unhealthy, but what has been found is that organic kale tends to have even more thallium in it than non-organic kale. And I don't think we fully know why this is, but sulfur tends to attract thallium, and organic kale is higher in sulfur than the non-organic kale. So if you're eating a crap load of kale, that actually might not be the best idea. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to not eat kale, that kale is bad for you, because kale does have a lot of good health benefits. But maybe we shouldn't be going as crazy with our kale consumption because it does tend to concentrate thallium, which in effect is going to lead to fatigue. So thallium is number one. So if you want to avoid your exposure to thallium, you know, obviously like try to get outdoors, try to get in the mountains, try to avoid being in the urban environments all the time. You can supplement with potassium because potassium antagonizes thallium. So it will push that thallium out of the body. So coconut water is a really great way to get potassium into your body. So is nettle tea. And actually a friend of mine combined the two. So she made this like chilled stinging nettle tea and then combined it with coconut water and put some ice in it. It's actually a really nice summer drink. So that's what I recommend. You can also take a potassium supplement. Typically with clients, I'll recommend Designs for Health K+2 potassium. You can take one of those with each meal. So that will antagonize thallium. But if you really want to know if thallium is an issue for you, you got to do urine and stool metals testing because it will not come up in the hair. And even with that, like if we may have metals in our body that our body is not actively excreting them. And if our body's not actively excreting them, then we're actually not going to see them on the test. So you can you can load up on potassium. You can also do something called BioCell. So this is actually a really good strategy for all different types of metals. So this is basically high grade silicone. And BioCell is from a company called Natural Factors. And you may have actually used it before because it's marketed for skin, hair, and bone health. So it has that really good benefit, but when you take it in higher doses, it actually kind of stirs up metals and immobilizes them into the bloodstream, which is a good thing to do, but then you want to also be taking a binder. So I usually recommend as a really good strategy to help reduce toxic metal load in your body is actually to take about 1 to 6 drops of the silicone, so of the BioCell, followed, later in the day by something like modified citrus pectin, which is a binder. So anything you stir up, it'll then bind to it and pull it out of the body. So that's a really good strategy for thallium. Next, I want to talk about chlorine. So this is another really interesting chemical that's very highly associated with fatigue. So where are we getting chlorine from? I think that's pretty obvious. Tap water is probably one of the biggest ones. If you are drinking municipal or city tap water, you're getting exposed to chlorine hands down, no questions asked. There is no city or municipal water supply that isn't getting disinfected with chlorine. So chlorine is really, really good at getting rid of, negative bacteria that can make you sick, or at least most of it. But what chlorine does is it actually inhibits your thyroid, okay? And your thyroid, of course, is that butterfly-shaped gland on your neck, and it regulates your metabolism. So thyroid hormone is the regulator of metabolism. And if you have a slower metabolism, you're going to have less energy production. So if you have hypothyroid, you know what it feels like to be tired, because typically with hypothyroid, you want to sleep all the time, you're really tired. And what chlorine does is it actually pushes the iodine off of the receptors and makes it so that that iodine actually can't get to the receptor. So this is a big deal because thyroid hormone is actually made primarily from iodine, and low iodine is always going to correlate with fatigue. So if you're drinking city or municipal water, you need to stop, because not only are you getting chlorine, but you're getting a ton of other crap. You're getting drug residues. So most people are taking some form of prescription. They pee it out. It ends up back in the water supply, and nobody is filtering for this. So there is no city in the world that is filtering for drug residues. We're also getting exposed to things from agriculture like pesticides and herbicides, radiation, also metals that come from industry. And then chlorine is a really, really big one. And we know that isn't all municipal and city water. So I recommend that you filter. You guys have probably heard me talk a lot about the Pure Effects filtration system. I have the compact, and it works really well. Gets rid of all that crap, but it doesn't affect the mineral content of the water, which is really, really important. You can also drink spring water. So maybe you have a natural spring in your area. Findaspring.com is a really good resource for that. You can also buy bottled spring water. Obviously, there is that kind of negative side effect of the plastic, right? So there is going to be compounds of plastic. So it isn't the best, but it's better than nothing, especially if you're traveling. Just make sure to get bottled spring water. Don't buy reverse osmosis. Try to find the spring, a really good brand of spring water. My favorite is Fiji. You can usually get that everywhere, and that's actually a really high quality source of spring water. But inexpensively, you can buy a Pure Effects water filtration system and make sure you're getting the chlorine out of your water. I also recommend that you filter your shower water, okay? Because a lot of like chlorine and fluoride and chloramine and bromine, all these things are typically in city water, especially the chlorine and the chloramine. And in hot water, they can actually vaporize into gases, and that actually gets into our lungs. So not only is it going to destroy your energy levels, but it can actually lead to a lot of breathing issues. And I've seen this quite a bit, that when people filter their shower water, they see that their asthma goes away, or they can just breathe better in general, because we don't want to be inhaling that stuff into our lungs. So that's chlorine. So that's number 2. So remember, number 1 was thallium. We get that from eating too much kale, from breathing in gasoline. And also if we live next to industry, which puts a lot of thallium into the environment, we can antagonize that with potassium, with things like nettle tea and coconut water, or even taking a potassium supplement. And then number 2, we just talked about, was chlorine. And the best way to avoid that is to filter your water. Make sure you are not getting exposed to chlorine and chloramine in water. And I'm sure someone's going to ask me about the Brita water filter, because I know this is probably the most common water filter. So yes, it will get rid of chlorine, but it does not get rid of chloramine. And chloramine will have a similar effect to chlorine. So I recommend Pure Effects. That is a better water filtration system. Okay. So finally, I actually want to talk about arsenic. And arsenic is a really, really interesting metal, because I think we are well aware that arsenic is very toxic. In the past, we used it for insulation in our home. So it's in a lot of insulation in older homes. But what a lot of people don't know about arsenic is it's actually added to chicken feed. It's kind of an antifungal, antibacterial. So a lot of farmers are actually adding it to chicken feed because their chickens are being raised in pretty disgusting environments. So they need to keep those chickens unsick so that they can sell them on the market. So they actually put arsenic into chicken feed. So this is a really, really good argument for eating organic food, right? Because if you're eating organic chicken, it's not going to have arsenic in it. But if you're eating conventional chicken feed, it's going to be contaminated with arsenic. And it's actually really interesting. I don't know if you guys are into true crime. So I love true crime. I listen to true crime podcasts all the time. I'm totally obsessed with like gruesome gore murder stuff. Super creepy and weird. But there's actually this podcast I've been listening to recently where this woman got accused of murdering her husband and poisoning him with arsenic. And she went to jail. I think she's been in jail for about 15, 20 years. And the people who run the podcast are lawyers, so they think she's innocent. So they're trying really hard to get her off, because what they've discovered is that they were chicken farmers. And hey, Melissa. Yeah, I love true crime. And they were chicken farmers, and they were actually adding the arsenic into the chicken feed, and he was drinking the chicken water. So he was actually slowly dying of arsenic poisoning. And she ended up getting blamed for his murder. And then she's currently in jail spending 15 to 20 years. So arsenic will poison you. It'll cause all kinds of random symptoms, but it does cause a lot of fatigue. And it's something that I see a lot in clients. I see it on urine metals. I see it come out on hair mineral analysis after we've been detoxing for a while. And yes, it will cause fatigue. It's similar to thallium, so it displaces different minerals on the mineral sites. So it's either going to prevent that mineral from binding to the receptor and being utilized, or it's going to downregulate or even upregulate it, depending on the person and what's going on. But it's like thallium, where it actually does interfere with the enzymes that feed the mitochondria. So you don't have good mitochondrial function, you are not going to have good energy, period. Okay. So commercial chicken feed is a really big way that people get arsenic. So if you're eating non-organic chicken, that is a mistake, because you are getting exposed to arsenic, and you do not want that in your system. Beer tends to have arsenic in it. So that's another one. We all love beer. So I would, try to buy your beer from a good source, look for organic, because there can be arsenic in some types of beer products. It can be in cosmetics. So again, using organic or, non-toxic cosmetic brands is going to be really important, because a lot of those conventional, products actually have arsenic in them. And I actually don't know why. I don't know why it's added into there, but it is on the list for arsenic sources. Contaminated drinking water. I mean, this is a source for all metals. So like I said, Pure Effects is my favorite filtration system. That's what I recommend. That's going to get rid of your chlorine, but also your arsenic. It's also in table salt, which is really interesting, because it's used as an anti-caking agent. And I think there's a lot of arguments why you shouldn't be drinking or eating sodium chloride or table salt, but this is another one, because arsenic can actually be put in it as an anti-caking agent, and so can aluminum. So that's another way that people get it into their system. Also, rice products. So rice products do tend to concentrate arsenic. So they seem to have an affinity for it. So if you eat a lot of rice, you can have a lot of arsenic in your system. Another one I've seen recently is contaminated well water. So well water can be toxic in iron and manganese. And I will typically see manganese really high on a hair mineral analysis when there is contaminated well water. But yeah, arsenic is a big one that I've been seeing lately. So I think a lot of people drink well water thinking that it comes from the ground and that it's good. But even if you're drinking well water, I do recommend that you filter it. Oh my God, there is so many flies in my house right now. It's driving me crazy. Okay, so those are the 3 toxins that you want to watch out for if you are struggling with fatigue. Take some of the steps that I recommended. We're going to be talking a lot more about different metals and contaminants and ways that you can detox them out of your body, because there's a lot of strategies that you can take to get these things out of your body. And I mentioned BioSil, which is really good for thallium. This is also really good for arsenic. It will immobilize the arsenic like it will the thallium. But if you're going to do the silicone, if you're going to do the BioSil, make sure you're doing a binder. So I like modified citrus pectin. Lots of research to support that this binds to toxins and pulls it out of the body. I would never take BioSil without a binder, because you're going to immobilize toxins and they're going to just get redistributed in your body. So that's a really good strategy for metals. And like I said, filter your tap water, filter your well water. That is the best way to not get exposed to chlorine, which is going to ruin your energy if you are continually getting exposed to it. Okay, so if you have questions for me, you can comment on this video. We're going to be doing a live Q&A on Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Pacific. I do it every single week. So yeah, comment on this video. You can send us a message through Facebook if you don't want to, if you want to remain anonymous, or you can send an email to my team, support@kendraperry.net, and I'll make sure to get that answered on Thursday. Okay, thanks everyone. I hope you have a fabulous start to your week. And I'll talk to you guys next Monday for the next live stream. Okay, bye everyone.